How about have only written life insurance? All right. Okay. And then how many people are writing ACA or Medicare? Or here to write ACA or Medicare? All right, fantastic. Well, let's get started. I wanted to know that. That way I know what to talk to you guys about. Closer? I'm usually loud enough. First off, guys, I'd like to start with a quick quote by Warren Buffett. The best investment you can make is in yourself. I, like you guys, sat in this very chair, like a couple of people have already mentioned. I believe it was January of 2020. My business partner actually suggested that we do this. I didn't know who 360 was. I really didn't have any interest in switching. I was pretty content in my first annual enrollment period of writing 42 plans. Might sound like a lot to somebody or to a few of you, but now is not. A couple of things about me. I got into the business in 2016. I started at a captive agency in Dallas. We were specializing in selling Medicare supplements and final expense. We, like a lot of people here, were brainwashed to think that Medicare Advantage was bad, was ugly, too much red tape, too many things to jump through, too many hoops, things like that. And so, in fact, I climbed all the way up to regional manager there. And I used to say to these people, I am a life insurance agent that just so happens to know how to sell Medicare. And that's really what I went in on. We were actually going in on Medicare, and the idea was to sell life insurance. Good old bait and switch. In June of 2018, I was traveling the U.S. with my now wife. I was in a Applebee's parking lot in California when I called the owner of that company and told him I'm out. After enough convincing from my wife and my now business partner, we decided that we could do this better. From 2018 to really the end of 2019, we had struggled trying to find our place. Insurance was great, but I wasn't really into the business for the upfront commission. I was brought into the business with the idea of renewals. So about May of 2019, in fact, was the first time I met Dave Duford in Vegas. We were selling final expense over the phone, and towards about summer of 2019, I was $1,000 away from failing out of the business. The reason I'm telling you guys this is because 2019 wasn't that long ago. And now here I am standing up talking to you guys. So I was on my honeymoon in Mexico when a gentleman had called me that I used to work with and told me I'm missing the boat, I need to start selling Medicare Advantage. Again, told him it's dirty, ugly, don't want any part of it. Too many tequila shots at that time, and I agreed. And if you guys know me, if I agree to do something, I'm gonna keep my word. Agreed to it, got into the business, and AEP of 2019 was my first annual enrollment period, and I wrote 42 plans. Felt like $1 million bucks, felt like I was the best Medicare agent out there. Right after that is when we found 360, and in fact, when I met Adam Howard, who just freshly wrote 800 plans, and I was like, shit. My 42 don't sound very good anymore. So I called him and I said, hey man, I see what you're doing and I don't understand how you're doing it. Please, if you could, tell me what you're doing. And he did. He gave me he gave me the farm, told me exactly what he did, and I mirrored that. And so in 2020 is when we really started scaling up. I didn't quite hit 800, but I did hit 600 face to face. And if, guys, I can't do the math, I'm terrible there, but if you do the math at 600 and what those renewals look like, you could really see how that would change your life. 2021 came. Of course, we had to go through the pandemic. It's going to be on camera. I was still face to face. Pandemic didn't stop me. I was just getting started. So if they would let me come over, I was coming over. I was going to start selling that business. So 2021 came. And my wife's business started picking up. It was my goal to retire her, and when I say retire, take her out of her 9-to-5 and allow her to do whatever it is that she wanted to do, which included traveling quite a bit. So 2021 came, and just when I get to the peak of my career here, it's time to pack up and leave. So I had to make that decision on whether I just roll with the renewals that I had and just kind of service that book, or find a way to continue writing business. So that came the over the phone side of things. Now, if you guys are familiar at all with anything over the phone, really the only people that get any sort of special attention or ability to sell over the phone are call centers, right? As far as independent agents, we really don't get, we had no support, nobody else was doing it, legally at least, I would say. And so I really had to pave that way here in 2021 to start writing over the phone. It is nothing like Final Expense. In fact, I'm gonna probably be the guy that crashes your over the phone dreams, okay? So I'm just gonna be honest today. I'm gonna paint the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so in 2021, I did take a significant, upfront commission pay cut by only writing 350 plans. And then of course this year, in 2022, my goal is to again sell 350 over the phone Medicare plans, as well as 100,000 in Final Expense. Here we go. What phone sales is not? Everybody has seen the guy on YouTube, I'm sure, that's sitting on a beach, sipping a Mai Tai, hanging out, selling over the phone, making it look super duper easy. And that guy is a liar, because it's not. So what phone sales is not? It's not hanging out by the beach. We're not working 4 hours a day. In fact, I would argue you work more. It's not faster than face-to-face by any means. Guys, when you're face-to-face, you have a lot more control. When you ask somebody about their prescription drugs and they start spelling it to you, you're just like, go get it. And that's just how I handled things for the last 6 years. Go get it, I'll write it down. I can do that significantly faster than you spelling something. It's not sexy, it's not easy, and it certainly isn't for everyone. All right, so again, I'm not gonna make it look super attractive, at least in the beginning. A question that I get asked daily by agents that are trying to sell over the phone is, what type of technology do you have? What type of CRM do you use? What hours do you work? How do you get somebody on the phone? All sorts of these questions that I continue getting asked. And I try and tell somebody, we keep it as simple as possible. I don't have fancy headphones. I don't have a fancy office overlooking the skyline. I don't have any of that. In fact, if you've seen any of my YouTube videos, it looks like I'm in a dungeon. All right? It's not sexy by any means. So what I use my cell phone. I don't have two phones or anything like that. I have my laptop and a printer. Of course, my headphones, I have them in that bag. They're the ones that come with my Apple phone, right? I don't use anything fancy by any means. A CRM, I get asked this all the time. Do you have a CRM that makes dials for you? And I understand that question because the agent that just asked me that comes from Final Expense. Final Expense, when you're selling over the phone, is a volume play. And so when you're doing volume, of course, you want something to dial for you. So I get that question, but my CRM is super basic. And then I use a Google Voice and a sideline number, which I'll go into and why I do that, and obviously an internet connection. Super simple, nothing fancy whatsoever. I'll start with a couple of pros and cons of selling over the phone. We'll start with the pros. Of course, there's no windshield time. I get that a lot. A lot of agents think you're saving time by selling over the phone because there's no windshield time. And I'll explain to you why that's not true. There's no wear and tear on the vehicle. Obviously, you can work from anywhere except a beach. Easier to develop a workflow. For me, I'm super unorganized. It's something that I've always struggled with. As far as going from like an office to the house, to my car, to a client's house, all that, everything gets lost. I mean, I'm just absolutely terrible. And so it's easier for me to kind of develop that workflow because I can just be at a desk. And then of course it's easier as well for me to maintain that schedule just because, quite honestly, I don't have a schedule. When I'm doing face-to-face, I work every hour on the hour from 9 to 5. And then when you're doing telesales, which I'll get into in just a minute, I don't set up a schedule. A couple of cons. You're very distracted. Most of the time you're working from home. In fact, this has been an argument with me and my wife a time or two, that when I'm working from home, I'm not taking the dog out, okay? I'm not going to lunch. I'm not doing any of that. We're not continuing our argument from earlier. Sounds like I have a terrible marriage. I don't. It's great. Dave, don't let her see this video. So the point that I'm trying to make is, look, I've even mentioned before that, like, if the dog shits on the floor, the shit sits there until I'm done. And that's just how I feel about it. Like, I take this super serious. It's not, because it is super duper easy to get distracted. It's harder, in my opinion, to build rapport. When I get to somebody's home, the first thing that happens is they see my face. I look like their grandchild. I look like I'm 4, right? So I knock on the door and they're like, oh, this guy's not threatening at all. Like, yeah, come on in. I shake their hand. I look them in the eyes. I'm polite. I mention something on their wall or whatever, and I ask to sit at the table. A lot of those things go into being able to build that rapport that you don't get to do while over the phone. So it's a little bit harder to build that rapport, not impossible, of course. That goes along saying that you can't read that body language. Again, you can't see when you're sitting there and you got your arms crossed, you're not paying attention, you're actually watching the TV when I'm talking. I can't see any of that. And so you got to be able to recognize that over the phone and to be able to pull their attention back to you. Here's the part where I counter the no windshield time, is their slower appointment times. Guys, we're talking over the phone. We're fighting TVs. We're fighting dogs, grandchildren. We're fighting for their attention. You want them to be listening to you and make sure that there's nothing that they miss. So your appointment times have to be a little bit slower, and you have to continue grabbing their attention and making sure that they're following along. Several of my appointments, and I'm more of a storyteller than a public speaker, so if I start getting on a tangent, let me know. But several of my appointments, I've had to literally tell them, John, get up and turn the TV off because I can't hear myself, right? And all the seniors have their TVs loud, things like that. So you really have to, really got to fight for that attention. And then, of course, everybody knows chargebacks can and will come easier. They don't know you. You're just the next guy that's called them over the phone. And so, if somebody, a face-to-face agent does come in and kind of woos them and does all the things that I'm talking about, it's so much easier for them to go, yeah, I'm going to stick with the face-to-face guy, the guy that actually comes to my house, sits down with me, and make sure that I'm good to go. So you're really battling all those things. I also wanted to invite, if you guys have any questions at any time, feel free to interrupt me, but not too many times, of course. When it comes to leads, this has actually recently changed for me and my strategy here. So again, I'm going to continue referencing final expense over the phone because that's a hot topic right now. Everybody's been asking about it, but it's been done before and it's been done successfully. So I'm going to continue referencing back and forth to that. But in final expense, you can be licensed in all 50 states, and if you're writing a Royal Neighbors policy, it's the same in Texas as it is in anywhere else, right? The only thing that you have to really learn is the underwriting. And so you, as a final expense agent, you can get all licensed in all 50 states and just work different time zones and things like that. In the Medicare space, to be flat out honest, I don't even feel confident. Like my book of business is in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I don't feel very confident in writing somebody in Austin or writing somebody in Houston because I don't like a certain carrier down here in Houston up in the DFW market, and then I found out they're king here. So I would be doing a disservice, in my opinion, to the client if they live down here if I didn't even consider that carrier, because I wouldn't. Never mind. We'll be nice today. So when it comes to leads, I still work the local market. The last 7 months I've been living in Michigan, but I'm continuing to sell in Texas, and I get asked this question an exorbitant amount of times is, why on earth do you only work in Texas? Or now that I've added Michigan, why do you only work those 2 states? Why aren't you working in all that? And it's because I don't know those markets very well. Okay, so I still continue to run the local approach. I'm sitting down in freezing freaking Michigan selling to somebody in Cleburne, Texas, okay? They don't have a clue where I'm at, but I make it sound like I'm there. I'm right next to them. So in my opinion, if you're gonna start in telesales, and especially in the Medicare space, what I would most likely suggest to you guys is get as many cheap terrible leads that you can find, just as many as you can. Don't buy the $25 direct mail leads, at least initially. Get as many as you can, and you're just gonna go through them. Every single one of them. You're gonna get a lot of no's, you're gonna get a lot of hang-ups, you're gonna get a lot of cussing out, things like that. The reason we're trying to do that is we're going through that learning curve. We're making sure that we're not wasting a bunch of money. We're not wasting thousands of dollars on these leads just to get that no. We're not burning that lead. So I would suggest anybody that wants to hop into this space, find a vendor, whoever it may be. I bet there's 10,000 old leads in this room alone that you could probably buy from somebody. Find somebody that will sell you those B leads or whatever you guys call it, and use that. Start there. And then after you've gone through 500 phone calls, you're gonna figure it out. You're gonna figure out what works and what doesn't work. So for the new agent, find something cheap, something fast, perhaps something even low intent, internet leads, and then try and stick local. Again, I wouldn't even feel comfortable. In fact, I don't know how these call centers, I don't know how they're even able to do what they're doing, because I don't know the market down here as good as an agent down here does. And so what's going to happen is that local agent will, in fact, in turn, replace that business. Once you become an experienced agent, you can start switching that marketing strategy, and you can go a little bit more expensive, maybe direct mail. A little bit slower lead, less sexy. Not everybody likes to work direct mail leads, but a much higher intent lead than somebody thinking they might get a $5 gift card for answering a phone. And then at that point, you could, if you feel comfortable, you could then go national on that level if that's something that you feel comfortable doing. So as far as your lead types, when I talk about what type of leads, I would say your Facebook, your Google, those internet leads, B leads, I would say try and do those as a new agent. You're not going to get the sales, most likely not get the sales that you're expecting, but you're getting that education that I think is extremely important when it comes to telesales. And then again, once you start getting better, you're converting more of those leads into sales, we then can look at live transfer, direct mail, things like that. And then again, of course, your marketing strategy. Again, I stick local. Maybe I would go regional, but I don't even go state or national at this level, and that could change here in the future. Preparing to sell, here's the fun stuff. Here's the stuff that I'm going to get on my soapbox for just a minute. Again, guys, when I'm getting ready to sell, this is when I'm sitting down to make calls, I'm not thinking about what I did last night. I'm not checking Instagram. I'm not doing any of that stuff, okay? So when I'm dialing, when I'm preparing to sell, I am dialing and I'm calling to close. This is a one-call close. If we were writing something that had a significant more commission up front, maybe that might take a 2 or 3 call close. Medicare is a 1-call close. We are not calling people back. We shouldn't even be asked that. Absolutely not. 1-call close. You want to have your tools ready. When I sit down, we're not getting leads ready. We're not making sure the computer works. We're not plugging it in. We're not doing any of that business. When I sit down at 9 o'clock in the morning, wherever I'm at, I've got my tools ready and I'm ready to make that first dial. In fact, the first number on my phone gets dialed at 9 a.m. every day. Leads, of course, we want to have those printed or in your CRM, however you do it. I'm still a pen and paper person. I like to write or print it out, waste trees, but I make all types of notes when I'm writing. In fact, I almost use that as my needs assessment. So I have those printed, ready to go. We're not fooling with the printer, because whoever makes printers, that's the craziest. Every single printer of mine's always broken. Scripts, I know there's some guys up here that have talked about maybe not using scripts. If you work with me, I'm going to hound this. I think this is super important. I think if you're just willy-nilly every conversation you ever have and you're not having success, how on earth am I going to be able to point out where you're going wrong? I make you do it. I mean, I'm pretty serious about it. And when I talk about scripts, I have MIP, and what that means is you memorize, internalize, and then personalize. Anytime I send one of my scripts, the first thing people try and do is personalize it. They don't like how it sounds robotic, sounds too Texan, whatever. I don't care. I make you or ask you to memorize that, internalize it, get to a point where you can say it in your sleep, in your dreams, in the elevator, anything like that. Then you can throw your twang on there. Stop trying to cut corners. Huge on being in the right headspace to sell. I think it's so easy, especially when you're doing telesales. It's extremely easy to get hung up on, get cussed out, whatever it might be, and then drop it all and go hang out or do whatever. I've done it. I've been guilty. I've run appointments where I got cussed out twice in a row, and I was like, whatever, I'm out. I'm gonna go to the bar or something. So you got to be in the right headspace, and I do tell people that you're going to get cussed out over the phone. You're one of 10 calls today that they've had about Medicare, especially during annual enrollment period, right? So you have to be in the right headspace. I tell people, if you are calling somebody and they start yelling at you or cussing you out immediately without you even getting your name out, hang up. Hang the phone up. You caught them at a bad day, bad time, whatever it may be. They could be a jerk, sure, unlikely. Most people aren't rude or mean or jerks, right? You just caught them at a bad time. Maybe the news pissed them off that morning or whatever it may be. So as soon as they start yelling at you, hang the phone up. And then on that lead piece, I write, didn't answer. Why? Because if I put, was an asshole, don't want to talk to that guy again, do you think I'm ever going to call that lead again? No. Heck no. I'm going to psych myself out before I even pick that phone back up. So I put didn't answer, and I called them the very next day. Chances are you're going to sell them. You just caught them at a bad time. And then again, as far as the close, this is a one-call close. We're not going to get to the end. We're not going to spend an hour on the phone with somebody that we're going to make a whopping $287 or less to get to the end, to be told, can you call me back tomorrow? Does anybody have any experience with that? Because how many times will they pick up that phone again? Zero. They'll never pick that phone up. And for whatever reason, it seems like no matter what number you call from, they know it's you and they'll never pick that phone up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of go through the flow of what it is that I do on the overview of my sales process. The first thing that I do when I get somebody on the phone is my introduction. And you've got 2 seconds to catch their attention, in my opinion. You've got to get them first. So has anybody ever had a phone call where somebody, especially these robocallers or whatever, when they would pick up the phone like, hi, Ethan, this is John, and I just wanted to call you and talk to you about, I don't want to talk to that guy, right? Shut up. And I hang the phone up, right? I do. And so what I do is say, John, hey, it's Ethan. Good morning. Hey, I just wanted to call and let you know that I got the form that you had filled out. Like, I have to scare them. I'm waking that up. Their pacemaker just skipped a beat with me when I answer. It shocks my wife. The dog moves, everything gets scary, right? But I have to catch their attention. I have to show them that I'm excited to talk to them. I've been working, and guys, when you do get especially a direct mail lead, that bad boy's expensive. You know, and my job with the direct mail lead is to turn that white piece of paper into green paper. That's all that I do. And you start with shocking them, making sure that you're separating yourself. Yes?
There's something that you did that was kind of interesting that I think is overlooked is you... Sorry.
Yeah, there's something kind of interesting that you did that a lot of people overlook is when you called, you didn't actually say Mr. Smith.
No.
You actually went by a first name basis. I didn't understand this, but can you explain why you do that?
Yes. So my first name is not the name you guys know me by. So when somebody calls me and says, hey, Robert, I know you don't know me because that's not what I go by. But it's also the same when somebody says Mr. Glidewell. I also don't go by that. So you don't know me. And so I say their first name as long as it's on the lead. I say their first name. That makes it sound like I'm Ethan down the road. And guys, you're going to see the entire time that I'm talking that I'm going to make it feel like I'm your next door neighbor when I'm on the phone with you. So the next door neighbor doesn't call you Mr. whatever. They call you John. Okay? So yeah, every time, and of course if the wife answers or whoever answers, I will say Mrs. whomever if their first name is on there. But always start with the first name. Then after that, as a sign of respect, I will say, hey, John, yeah, and get their attention. They go, all right, well, Mr. Gladwell, what I was calling to tell you about, but I start with their first name. Great point. The next thing that I do after I introduce myself is I let them know that I've received the card that they had filled out and sent back to me. This isn't a cold call. This is something that you filled out and sent to me. All that I'm doing is calling to let you know that I received it and getting this information out to you. And so I asked them why they filled that lead out. Whatever lead piece that you work, you want to figure that out, because quite honestly, whatever the answer that they tell you, that's the sale. They'll tell you exactly what they need, and that's what you're going to base that whole sale off of. So they're going to say, yeah, love my plan, but I don't get any dental. Love my plan, but I don't know, John down the road gets $2,000 in vision or dental or whatever it may be. They're going to tell you the answer right then and there. And the next thing that you're going to do is you're going to go, great, that's what I help out with. Whatever the answer is, I don't care what it is. I don't care if they need Medicaid or drugs or whatever it is. I say that's what I specialize in, and John, that's what I'm going to help you out with today. The next thing that I do is I do what I call a bridge, and it's a bridge from introducing myself and figuring out what it is that they need into the needs assessment. So my bridge is simple. I say, again, my name is Ethan Gladwell. I'm here in Fort Worth. And again, I did get this form that you had filled out. And so today what I'm going to do for you is I am going to ask you just a couple of quick questions just to kind of gauge and see where you're at and figure out if there's any opportunity to help you out. So what that's going to look like, again, is I'll ask you just a few quick questions. And what I invite you to do along the way, John, is ask any questions that you have about Medicare. And feel free to interrupt me. That's fine. And we'll make sure that we're going to get you taken care of today. We're going to get your questions answered and see if we can't get you some dental today. The idea behind the bridge is that you're gaining permission to talk further. You're gaining permission to ask questions. Okay? And so that's the next part, is you're gaining permissions for questions. You're making sure that they understand. The last thing that I say in my bridge is, does that sound fair, John? Does that sound okay to you today, John? Fantastic. The next thing that I do is I go into a needs assessment. Now, during a needs assessment, which I'll talk about here in just a minute, that's where we're fact finding. That's where we're gathering the information that's going to help you make that sale. Okay, so we're asking, well, we'll go into that in just a second. We'll summarize the needs assessment. Once I've asked all the questions, and guys, I'll talk about this in just a minute. During that needs assessment, it's very easy, at least over the phone, for this needs assessment to sound like an interrogation. It's not supposed to sound like that. This is a conversation, and it's an art to make sure that it flows, okay? You're not going, how tall are you? How much do you weigh? Who's your doctor? Like, that sounds creepy, right? We don't want to do that. We want to make sure that it sounds like a conversation that's flowing. After we get all of the information that we're looking for, we want to summarize it. We want to make sure that we got it all correctly. Has anybody that's ever written a Medicare plan not summarized it, not gone back over everything, not checked everything, forgot an insulin in the fridge, forgot a doctor, forgot something like that? You have to summarize this, and you have to get that verbal permission that you got everything correct. So John, just to make sure that I've got everything correct here. It looks like, you're on 123 Main Street. It's just you. Wife passed a couple years ago. You're in Tarrant County. Your height and weight's this. Your health is this. Your doctors are this, and you have that United Healthcare plan. Is that correct? Good. All right, fantastic. Well, John, I think there's an opportunity to help you out today. The first thing that I'm going to do with your permission is I'm going to create you what's called a profile on Medicare's website. Has anybody done that? In my opinion, you have to. And if you're not doing it, you're missing it. You have to create them a profile on Medicare.gov. Get their permission. Let them know that, of course, what it's going to do for you is it's going to allow you to see their exact current plan that they're in, double check if they have any LIS or anything like that. And then at the end of it, you'll give them the username and password because you don't need it anymore. Okay? Nobody will ever ask for the username and password, but make sure that you offer to give it to them because they don't know what to do with it. Once you create them a Medicare.gov profile, if you're not familiar with this, become familiar with this. It's going to tell you everything. It's going to show you their Part A and Part B date. It's going to show you their current coverage, who's been in a house, who, when you ask for their insurance card, he pulled out 6 cards. Here you go. Good luck. You know, everybody, if you've been doing this long enough, you're going to find it. So you got to make sure that you're even talking about the right thing, because there could be a dual plan in there, there could be a regular plan, there could be a chronic plan in there, there could be just whatever there is in there. And of course, if you try and switch them to a plan that they're already on, A, it's going to get declined, and B, you're going to waste everybody's time. So on that Medicare profile, we're both looking at the current plan, and it's also going to show you their LIS level. Okay, very important things there. Another thing here recently that I've discovered that it does show you is it shows you their activity. And what I mean by that is 2 years ago when I'd create somebody a Medicare profile and I'd take a look, they've been on the same plan since 2007, right? Okay, that guy's loyal, right? That guy, I'm gonna make that sale. But that guy's not gonna switch every quarter. And then when you look at that and you see that somebody switches every single quarter for the last 2 years, what does that tell you? That's not a good client. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop them and say, John, slide over the computer, of course, if I'm doing it face to face, and say, what is that? What's going on here? Like, clearly you don't have somebody like myself helping you out to make sure that this doesn't happen, right? So we got to make sure that we're looking at those things. And then after we create the Medicare profile, of course you're going to get the scope of appointment signed, because you're going to have a really good idea what you're going to be able to do at that point. Should have a really good idea. Get a scope of appointment signed. Now over the phone, there's several ways to do it. My best, or the best way that I've found, is using Sunfire. If you guys don't have access to that, get it. Sunfire allows you to both text and email to sign. It's super, super awesome, really is what it is, because when you try to, in my opinion, when you try to use the carrier scope of appointment, well, you're ready to do biz, like you're ready to sell that product. And it's hard for me, at least in that point, to sell that product without selling the product. And what I mean by that is when you do like United Healthcare, you get them on the phone, you're doing business, right? And I haven't even explained to them how I'm going to help them out. So I usually will shoot a text message over to them, which, guys, if you sit there and think seniors don't text, you're lying to yourself. I've been in this 6 years, and 6 years ago, nobody texted. Now everybody texts. So if they don't text, they live with somebody that does. So you can ask them who's there to help you with that text message, get it taken care of, get that out of your mind, because it was certainly something that I thought. Once you get that scope of appointment signed, we're going to pitch that product, and once we pitch that product, we're going to do the close and cool down. I think I talked a little bit too much on that. I'm going to keep going so I can get through all this. My example of a needs assessment, which, guys, if you need this, I will send it out. I don't mind doing that at all. It's super simple. I develop what's called a personal profile. I get their full name, date of birth, address, and their county. And then the next thing that I ask, because this is super important, is, John, do you make 5 minutes already?
Yeah.
Do you make your decisions? Let me get through some of the good stuff. Okay. While on the phone, I'm gathering that information, okay? The next thing that I'm doing is I'm building value. I'm building my value. So I'm explaining what it is that I do and how I can help them, how I work with all the insurance companies. Then, well, it's not then. This is super important. This is something that I've mentioned or talked about for 6 years. It's called gaining and maintaining control. Although extremely important face-to-face, it's even more important while over the phone. So you have to gain that control, and then you have to keep it. Every time you ask about somebody's health and they're talking about had a heart attack 15 years ago, that doesn't matter, right? You're going to let them answer that, and then you're going to take control by going, great, John, let's talk about the last 3 years, because that's what's important today, okay? After about every 2 to 3 questions, you have to re-engage them. You have to make sure that they're listening to you. You have to make sure that they're following along and not watching that TV. And that's just as simple, does that make sense, John? Are you following along, John? Are you making sure you understand this, John? You got to make sure that you're keeping that attention. And then you don't want to let the phone ever go quiet, in my opinion. So if you've got a second that you need to look at a carrier's website, or you need to look at Medicare.gov, or whatever it may be, ask them a simple question. John, what did you say you did for work again? Let them talk while you're working, okay? You want them to just keep talking and not just let it go silent and weird. And then, of course, throughout that phone call, they're going to wear you down just because it's a long process, but you have to maintain that energy. You have to make sure that you're excited the entire time. Closing the sale. Verify their current plan and the problem. So John, remember you had mentioned to me you have this plan, and although you really enjoy it, the biggest problem is it doesn't have dental. It doesn't, your copays are too high, whatever it might be. Is that correct? Fantastic. Okay, so you're reviewing that needs assessment and you're poking holes in their plan. Is what I call poking holes. You're showing them subconsciously that their plan sucks. Okay, it's a terrible, you're never going to say that, but you're like, yeah, oh yeah, you do have quite a few copays. Yeah, that out-of-pocket cost is quite a bit. And then what you're going to do is you're going to tell them, John, okay, I think I have a solution for you. Like, I'm super excited about this. This is going to be great. And so, John, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put you on hold for just a minute, and I'm going to take a quick peek and see if there's anything that I can do for you. In that time, if you don't mind, go ahead and grab a piece of paper and a pen, because I'm going to get you to write some things down as soon as I come back. I'll put them on hold, and I'm just muting the phone, right? So I'm listening to what they're saying, and it's funny because you can hear the excitement on it. Like, they're running around getting stuff, get the damn pen, or whatever. Like, it's hilarious. I love it. And then you're going to come back and say, John, are you there? And they're going to say, yeah. I'm like, John, all right, you got that pen and piece of paper? I sure am. Fantastic. Well, John, I think I've got your problem solved, okay? And so that's what we're going to do is we're going to go over this, and you're going to pitch that to them, and you're going to have them, before we can do that, John, I'm going to have you sign the scope of appointment. All this means is that you're going to give me the permission to tell you about this plan and how we're going to solve your problems. You're going to go over the details and the timeline with them. This is something I have to talk about before I run out of time. This is something that I just created. It's called the 5-time touch system. This is how many times, in my opinion, I think you should talk to that client. And so the first one, of course, is when you call them and you close it. Okay? The very next day, you're going to call them, and then you're going to verify that you've submitted everything. John, just wanted to call. It's Ethan from yesterday talking about Medicare. Just wanted to call and verify or let you know that I got everything submitted, didn't miss anything. You're good to go. The next time you will hear from me is when I've got the green light that the insurance company has approved you. Thanks, great. What we're doing here is buyer's remorse is a thing. And they're not going to know that they made the right decision, so we're calling them the very next day, we're following up, and we're letting them know that everything's good and you're happy. The next thing that you're going to do is 5 days later, after they're approved, tell them to call you when the card arrives. That's not it. My wife did this. Okay, anywho, you're going to call them after they get approved, all right? And then what you're going to do is you're going to tell them at that time, John, when you receive your card in the mail, make sure that you give me a call. It's very important that you do. I want to verify your primary doctor, make sure everything's correct. They're most likely not going to call you, even though you've stamped it into their head that they need to call you. So you're going to set a timer on your phone. You're going to call them in 2 weeks and double check that they've received everything and that everything looks correct. Then the month after it's effective, so if I set an effective date of 3/1, I'm going to call them anytime in March, and I'm going to call them and I'm going to follow up. I'm going to double check that everything's worked, their drugs are covered, and that is when I'm going to ask them for a referral. I don't ask them step 1.
Wait, can
I want to go back.
something on that?
Yeah, I want to go back.
Because that's super important, that right there, the 5-step touch. How much do you think that improved your persistency when you started doing it? 100%.
I have an example. I'm sorry, I'm going to run over, Dave. Real fast, Luis gets like 4 hours here. They give me like 2 minutes. Where's he at? Yeah, okay. So how important this is. I sold somebody the other day, just on Monday afternoon from my hometown, and here's how it went. I sold him, and he was like, yeah, that sounds okay. I think that'll take care of my problem. Wasn't so sure, right? He wasn't that confident, but I convinced him to do so. And I explained to him my process and how many times that I'm going to call him. He said, sure, whatever. Called him the very next day. Said, John, got everything submitted. Everything was good. He goes, oh, yeah. And he goes, well, just to make sure, I'm going to Aetna, right? Yeah, you're going to Aetna, yada, yada. I answered some questions that were very important to do. And then I called him after the approval, and I said, hey, you're good. You're going to get your Aetna card. This is how it's going to work. And he stopped and said, nobody's ever done what you've done before. You've said that you're going to call this many times. You're going to do this just like this, and you've done exactly what it is. And I now have all the confidence in you that you're going to take care of me. Because when I sold it, I was like, we'll see, right? I don't know. I think he's going to make it, and he made it. And then just yesterday, I got a referral from him, somebody that I just randomly called. All right, how to cross-sell, we kind of went over that. You can't go in on a Medicare lead, sell Medicare, and then turn around and sell life insurance. You can't do that, but there are certainly ways. Get with me.